Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video. I do want to say thank you to all those who subscribed and who have sent some really positive comments about my the body camera video. That one there was a lot of great comments in there. I appreciate everybody who did comment in a positive way. Appreciate that. I do have a thank you video about getting more into specifically as to that video and why I had posted it, and you can check that video out if you like. So this video is one video out of many in a series that I'm titling my jail experience, and it has to do with obviously my experience in jail. So for this first one, I'm gonna go starting from the very beginning. I'm gonna give a brief background as to what happened. I'm not gonna go into like crazy specifics, but I'll go into a brief background of it, and then we'll get into the jail portion. And again, there'll be several videos that I will make, and I'm doing this all on the fly. You know, I don't have special lighting, special video. I don't have you know anything crazy. It's just one person who has a smartphone who's just talking about their experiences. So anyway, let's dive into this. So August 15th, I was sentenced, and before that, a little bit of background, I was charged with second-degree assault. I'd had a really bad night in late March, and I was arrested and charged with second-degree assault. I'm just going to say that I had pushed someone. I'm not going to get into too many specifics with that, but I pushed someone and I was arrested. And then August 15th was the day that I was sentenced. On that specific day, there were media was there in the courtroom, and obviously the judge and the state's attorney and my defense attorney and everyone was there. So I was sentenced to 60 days and some other things. But anyway, as I was standing there, that was probably one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life. I had never felt so distraught or so empty in my life, and hopeless. Hopeless would be the big word there. Just a huge sense of hopelessness, and losing your freedom is really scary. And so I had a lot of emotions during that time. And so anyway, I was standing there in just disbelief of what was taking place before me. So I started to get really upset, but I knew that what I got was what I got, and I had to go and I had to deal with it. You know, there was nothing else I could do about it at the time. So I stood up. I was led out by a deputy, and we went down into this basement area of the courthouse. And there they do all the preliminary stuff. They remove some of your personal items, things like that. And then they have you in a holding cell. And in the holding cell, that's when I really started to look deep inside about why I was there, what was happening, why it was happening, all the, the what, the why, the hows, the when, all that I was asking of myself. Because being alone in that cell you have time to think. So I started that thought process. I started it there. Now, I wasn't there very long. I was only there for maybe 30, 40 minutes. And I got into a van, and then they transferred me to Jennifer Road Detention Center in Annapolis there. When I got there, I was led to an intake area, and they have cells in there. Yeah, some of the guards and things like that. So then when I walked in, one of the most humiliating things in my life, because I'd never been to jail in my life. I'd never been in trouble. This was my first experience. And so they took me and a guard, went into a private cell area, and he had to literally watch me undress. So I had this other human being watching me undress and just completely vulnerable. And so it was very embarrassing. It was very humiliating. However, I understand why they have to do it. They want to make sure that I don't have any weapons. I'm not bringing anything crazy into the jail. It makes sense. But then you have to put on these green. I had put on this green pants and then this green shirt that went over it, and it's just the typical jail attire, if you will. It was green. That was the color that they had. So anyway, then I was put into a holding cell, and because of my status as a police officer, they came to me and asked me if I wanted protective custody. I didn't know anything about it, so I said yes. So they processed me that night, and they took me into this protective custody area of the jail, and it was dark, damp. If it reminded me of one of those movies that some people watch, of the medieval times. It's like this dungeon, and it's dark and damp, not very little lighting, no natural light. And they put you in this cell alone. I was in this one cell alone, and there was very little light. It was two metal racks, and they give you like a cushion padded little bed thing. They don't even give you a pillow. It's actually in this padded thing that you actually unroll, and then you put it onto the metal bunk, and that's kind of your bedding, if you will. And they give you sheets. And at that point, being the worst point of my life, feeling very low, very hopeless, I had told the guard that I had plans for a suicide attempt, and so he immediately got onto his radio, called other people, and I had talked to other prisoners, other inmates in the jail, and it's fairly common for at least individuals who've never been in jail before in their lives to kind of go through and have this feeling of loneliness and hopelessness, to want to hurt themselves. But it was pretty serious with me. So anyway, they had a lot of guards on me. They took me upstairs to the nursing area. There were a couple nurses there, and they just were asking me questions. And at that time, I went into I'd had a full PTSD manic episode. Flashbacks, I had a lot of flashbacks. I was sweating, I was shaking, crying, all this stuff. I was really going through a lot of emotions at that time. And what triggered that was being put in this cell alone and isolated, and it really set off a lot of things that I had put away from my military and my police experience. I put those feelings and thoughts away, images away, and it all came to the forefront when I was put in there, and it was really, really bad. So I was at the nurses' station, and they were asking me questions, and I answered their questions, and they said, okay, based on this, you need to go into a suicide watch and certain things. So their idea of addressing this mental health crisis was to put me in a cell alone with the light on for 24 hours a day, no natural light, no social interaction with other human beings, sleeping on a concrete slab in a cell that's 5 feet wide, maybe 7 feet in length, high ceiling. Again, they leave the light on 24 hours a day. You have this concrete slab, and they're supposed to check on you every 15 minutes. Well, they didn't do that. They didn't check on me every 15 minutes. Sometimes it was sporadic. It was different with different guards and different shifts. They would do things differently. And I literally was given, out of 24 hours in a day, I was literally given maybe 15 minutes to shower and make a phone call. And in that cell alone, you know, there's a saying in the military. They said there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. Well, I feel like there's no such thing as an atheist in a jail cell, because God is alive and well in our prisons, folks, and our mental institutions. I speak from experience. Being alone in that cell with nothing to read, nothing to do, no human interaction, a concrete slab, your mind starts to really lose itself in all these different directions. And all I could do when I was laying there at times, I would lay on the concrete slab with this like green padded suit that they gave me, you know, because that's how they treat someone who's having a mental health crisis, is they shove them in this isolated cell in hopes that you would commit suicide. I feel like that's what they were doing there, because it seems it caused irreparable harm to put me in a cell like that with the conditions that I have. It would just make you want to commit suicide more. But that's where we are at in this country. We treat our prisoners like garbage, like less than human beings. And I get it. Sometimes there's certain people who commit heinous crimes, and you're like, this is what you deserve, and shut the hell up and be lonely and be in this cell. That's fine. And sure, I'm sure there's cases like that out there where we can take a look at it and we can say, yeah, that was really terrible, and this person deserved that because of their actions, their bad actions. But I can tell you, never being in trouble in my life, I made a mistake and I admitted to it. But my mental health is important. You don't take someone who has a mental health crisis and put them in that type of environment. That's not healthy. That's not right, and that's not how we should be treating our prisoners in our jails around this country. We should be treating those in those predicament that way. That was unacceptable, and that actually caused more trauma for me. And I was in there for 3 days, in that situation for 3 days. And I had asked one of the guards for a Bible. You know, I was under the assumption that prisoners do have some basic rights, and religious practices or religious documents and religious books and things like that would be allowed. And I was denied the first time I had asked one of the guards. I had asked for a Bible. And I know they have chaplains in the jails, but he denied me that. So anyway, I was in this situation. And I was thinking a lot about what I did, what happened, and what I needed to do to move forward to get through this. And God, I relied on God the entire time. And whether you're religious or not, when you're put in that situation, when you're put in that environment, you reach out to something. A little bit of hope. If you don't have any hope at all, then that's it, right? And then you go down this spider web of of destructive thoughts. So when you're put into that environment, you're like thinking of, how do I give myself some hope? And I had God, I had Jesus. That's all I had in there. You know? And to be fair, God, Jesus, whatnot, they're not going after the perfect, the people who are perfect or who claim to be perfect, or the rich and the powerful. And maybe God uses them for certain things, that's sure. But, God isn't, I feel like, trying to go to the Pope to convince him. God is in the jails. God is in the mental institutions. God is in those places because he wants to use them for good, for his purpose. And I felt like that I was in there for a reason. And I was thinking about how I could find a purpose. And so I started, after I was out of that situation, which I'll get into, I started journaling. I started reading the Bible. I even started a little Bible study in the cells with other inmates. But anyway, so the very last day that I was there, I had come across, there was a sergeant that I'd come across. And I was at my lowest point. And his name was Sergeant Deere. And he was a fantastic person. And I feel like he was a messenger from God, because he came by my cell, he checked on me. He gave me this Bible right here that I still have. And in this Bible, I actually, with the pencil that I have, I wrote about him and my experience. And I'll just give you a little tidbit here. So Sergeant Deere came as a messenger and a provider. He gave me this Bible when no other officer would give me one. He also got me my medications and got me out of that cell and into a larger cell with other inmates. And I feel like that day he really stepped in and helped me. And I had been praying for help for the 48 hours, almost 72 hours in there. And he really made a difference and got me out of there. And I really appreciate him. But anyway, he gave me this Bible. And then I was moved to a different cell, which I'll have for a later video. But anyway, that situation was probably the worst situation ever been in my life, but it made me think about what I had to do next and how do I get out of that. And I have talked to other inmates because I've asked them, what is it that you do and what are strategies that you have in order to get through the day, right? Because you're stuck in there, nowhere to go, nothing to do. You've lost your freedom, right? You're in this cell. What do? Every inmate that I've talked to in there talks about meditating, talks about breathing, talks about reading, journaling, things like that. Some meditate, right? Some meditate. And some could call that praying. I was praying the whole time because that's all I had. I didn't have anything else in that cell. I had nothing else but prayer. And you'd be amazed, for all my Christian folks out there, you'd be amazed at what prayer can do for you. And I'm sitting here now telling you my story because of thanks to God. I give all the glory and grace to God. God was able to deliver me from that cell. And he kept me alive because he has a greater purpose for me. And what I want people to know with it, I'm going to end this first video here, but what I want people to know, if you or someone that you know is in a jail or in prison, reach out to them, let them know that you're thinking of them. Maybe even maybe even see them if you can go to visit them. Because in the jails, it's hopeless. It's really hopeless. And you can see it on a lot of people in there, a lot of inmates in there. You know, and I feel that God has a heavy presence in our jails and our prisons, because those are some of the people that God wants for his purpose. And I think if you know someone in the jails, reach out to them, let them know that you're thinking about them. Let them know that you haven't forgot about them, and pray for them. Pray for them, because it's hard. It's really hard in those jails, and going through something like that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this first video up. So that was my first initial sentencing, transition, going into the jail, protective custody, then being on suicide watch, and then being stuck in this cell for 3 days. No natural light, no human interaction. You get food, you get this little food box with a little straw that's basically made out of like very light cardboard, and that's all you're given. And they leave the light on, and I almost felt like it was torture in a way. It was almost torturous, because they leave the light on, you have concrete bench, you can't talk to anyone. They don't have any mental health. When I was there, they didn't have any mental health providers there to speak to. It took them 3+ days to finally get my medications. And I have COPD, and I had some other things going on. And it's just unacceptable. You know, just because you committed a crime, you're a prisoner, now you're here in the jails, doesn't mean you lose your basic human rights. And as I sit here, Jennifer Road Detention Center from Anne Arundel County Detention Centers, total abject failure. Total abject failure. Absolute failure from my time in there to when I left. Just total failure. And I'll go into that. Obviously, not having my medications for 3 days is harmful. Being put in a isolated cell is harmful for my mental health. That's not good. That's not what you're supposed to do. And that's not how we should be doing it. If that's standard operating procedures, I hope this video will get out to somebody. And I myself want to start advocating for better treatment of prisoners, because that's flipping ridiculous. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video, and look out for the other videos that I will come along. Now, before I leave here, I wrote in a journal after this. Writing this down really helped me. So, for me, it was a way to release some of the tension, and it really helped me get through those rough days. So the next video, I'm going to kind of go into more depth with these writings, and then I'll talk about the next phase. Thank you for watching this. Please hit the subscribe thing. That helps me out. That's really nice. And just don't forget about those who are in our prisons. Think about them. Pray for them. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you. Have a great night. God bless.